G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and today an episode, well, we haven't done one like this in a while actually. It's all about fluff. So here we have on screen right now the Tarantula missile battery, and I was sort of mentioning the other day how it's, let's just say it's less useful to the discerning 30k player than many other choices would be. And I sort of brought up how, we've had a long line of releases which are sort of questionable in, and this came up in the live stream the other night where it's like, well, why did, of all the legions that would, get, say, a Leviathan dreadnought, right? I could think of a few that it would suit really well, like, I don't know, Iron Hands, Iron Warriors, probably Salamanders. They would all really, benefit from having a custom Leviathan chassis. But of all the legions, one of the ones that got it was, obviously, the Night Lords. And it seems a bit strange. And a friend of mine, from viewer of the channel, a great painter, Joseph, sort of asked the question like, well, Mac, you care a lot about fluff. Like, do you think they shouldn't have them? And not in a menacing way or anything like that. He was just, asking out of genuine curiosity, like, why? Why would they not have them? Why is it less than optimal? And so I want to use today as a episode to talk about that sort of thought process and how you can use thinking outside of the box to maybe inform some of your army building decisions and what you might do with the force. So let's start with that. Let's look at the Night Lords Leviathan pattern Siege Dreadnought here. So of all legions that would have a dreadnought, you probably don't think of the Night Lords. I know I don't. And let's just put it out on the table before any further in the episode. All legions basically have access to all equipment, okay? Now, whether or not they want to lean into using that equipment or whether it goes against their doctrines and fighting style is a different story. Think Raven Guard and Terminators, for instance. They aren't big on the Terminators because they're big on the infiltration tactics and the rapid assault opportunities and the ability to hit, maneuver, hit again from another angle that things like Assault Marines provides. That is the Raven Guard fighting style. Terminators are just there because sometimes some jobs just require a Terminator. Same sort of thing with the Night Lords, a very similar thing. Here you have a legion which, it's named after, Comrade Kurz is named after Colonel Kurtz in Apocalypse Now, someone who wants to use terror as a weapon. Okay? And terror as a weapon is a very similar thing. It's using infiltration tactics, it's causing dissent and dissension behind enemy ranks through things like terror tactics, making them terrified to engage the Night Lords, afraid to rebel. And a big, slow, lumbering dreadnought, it's terror-inspiring if you're the poor infantry that have to go up against the thing in close combat, I'm sure, but in general, it's not very conducive to that sort of means, whereas infiltrating a couple of Night Raptors behind enemy lines and people wake up and there's just the flayed skins of, every second bloke just hanging up in the trenches. Yeah, it's probably going to have more of a psychological impact than looking across the battlefield at a Leviathan Dreadnought. That's something every Legion can do well, but terror tactics is something Night Lords do uniquely well. So why would they have a Leviathan? Well, this opens up Pandora's box. Why might someone have a Leviathan in the Night Lords? Because think about it. Who would get interred in a Dreadnought? Normally, it's going to be big heroes of the Legion. This is Captain such and such, famous, victor of the siege of Abraxas, an amazing character. We simply cannot lose this knowledge from the Legion, right? Cool. No one in the Night Lords has that kind of sentimentality. So straight away, you're like, who would rescue a fellow Night Lord just to inter him within a Dreadnought? And then you think about it, it's like, well, the Night Lords, they're a chapter, or a legion, I should say, of murderous individuals, mostly career criminals and gangers, sadistic people, just generally bad people, in the Night Lords Legion, players too, and, would they want to be in a Dreadnought where they don't get the thrill of the kill? Is it a punishment for them? What if it is someone who is condemned to wearing the red gloves with the mark of death, of censure from Comrade Kurz? Maybe he feels they got out of it too easy. So the Primarch himself demands, no, put them into a Dreadnought their penance is not yet complete to me. They are still marked for death. They got out of it too lightly. Landed on that planet, copped a bolt gun round to the face or something, and he was down instantly. It's like, didn't really pay a penance to the Legion, did he now? That sort of thing. What about if the guy inside the dreadnought is a sadistic killer who wants to keep on murdering and requests that he is interred in a dreadnought in order to keep murdering and terrifying others even after he should be dead? He just gets off on it that much. The options are limitless when it comes to the fluff with which you build your army if you think about the character and the traits of the people you're building it around. So, another example of this, and I just picked out some random ones, right? Let's look at Iron Hands. Iron Hands as a Legion go insane after they lose their Primarch. And we all think of Iron Hands like mass Terminator tactics and Medusan Immortals and things like that. But what about the guys who have gone so insane from the loss of their Primarch that they literally had saved one of his hands and essentially bio-welded it into a automata so that the Primarch could keep commanding them in death? You can build a force around something like that. Allied in with Mechanicum, perhaps. You could even do it as a traitor Iron Hands force, just to open up some additional force org slots, or maybe you start using demon engines. And, they play as demon engines rules-wise, but your fluff on the tabletop can be they're actually AI-controlled, or, cursed machinery built by using prescribed means. Bad situations. This is a minor example. Another one is the White Scars. So the White Scars are a force I did, quite a bit of time with. Played them for a couple of years there. And you've got the Ebon Keshig Terminators in the White Scars. Well, what are the Ebon Keshig? They are regular White Scars Legionnaires who feel that they've committed some crime that requires penance. Their punishment is basically you lose your name, lose your rank, and you're given the black armor of shame, and you will wear that until you achieve such merit in battle or such notoriety that you fall in battle. And then it's basically you've paid your penance, your sins are absolved, and you get to go to White Scars Heaven, which is pretty much where the Khan's been hanging out since the heresy in the Webway with his Dark Eldar harem. So, okay, makes sense. What about their dreadnoughts? To White Scars, dreadnoughts are a fate worse than death, okay? So to be interred in is to no longer feel the wind in your hair, to no longer smell the open steppes, right? They very openly say this, how White Scars would choose death or some form of bionic enhancement over being interred in a dreadnought. I thought to myself, why the dreadnought's white? Would it not make more sense that a dreadnought is realistically like the Ebon Keshig? It is your last chance at redemption. A dying warrior in the battlefield who fled from battle or something, let his brothers down, and his dying request is to be interred in the dreadnought so he can redeem his honor to go to Space Mongol Heaven. That to me made a lot of sense. So when I built my White Scars, I painted my dreadnoughts as Ebon Keshig. So white shoulders on the dreadnoughts, but black for everything else on the torso, with, some red striping and stuff in there for some colour. But it worked for me really well as headcanon. It's like, well, White Scars don't like dreadnoughts. It goes counter to all the things they want, which is speed, manoeuvre, and, bikes. Bikes go vroom. And so to rationalise it, to make it sense, to make it feel right for the army, that's the approach I took. So there are many ways of thinking outside of the box to achieve a means to an end. What about the Ultramarines? Ultramarines probably seem, pretty boring on the surface, right? Even in the Horus Heresy, there's, they're very much the tactical Space Marine Legion, is how everyone sees them. Master of nothing, but great at everything, which is fine, perfectly fine. But there are cool stories you get about the Ultramarines that inspire options. One of those might be the Ultramarines on Armatura, I think it is, the ones who fight in the novel Betrayer, and the World Eaters and the Word Bearers are clashing against their shield walls. That's a Breacher Heavy force, and Praetorian Breachers are one of the Ultramarine specialist units you can take. Now, if you're playing Ultramarines, yeah, okay, points for points, if you want to look at it, it's much, much better as an investment to invest in Invictus Suzerain. However, if you want to have a fun, fluffy theme which retains friendships, why not look at doing Praetorian Breaches? That is, of course, the sword and board version of Breaches, and that is this sort of kit that you see on screen here. And it's building your breaches out with this particular loadout. And funny enough, this is one of the few loadouts that actually works with the modern plastics. You just sort of got to clip the little nubs in the plastic shoulders for it to fit. Buy it from China. That cough is coming back. What about Kelth? Remus Ventanis is here. How many Marines are still in Kelth? Right? How many Marines are fighting if you've read the Kelth anthology book? That's all about sort of the war that is going on undeclared, undecided is a better term for it, on the surface of Kelth. So once the radiation of the sun has boiled away the atmosphere and everyone is now living in the subterranean caverns and ecologies on the planet, and they're moving from these arcologies and attacking one another in these cavern systems, then in that situation, you've got, the interesting task forces that Remus Ventanis puts together. He's the one conducting that campaign. And with that, what about Edith Thiel, the Ultramarine sergeant with the red helmet? What about his force that he puts together? The ragtag teams that he's got going. Great examples of what you could do with things like the Pride of the Legion Rite of War, and taking heavy use of veteran and seeker companies to represent these sort of headhunter-type kill teams going out there trying to chase down Cor Ferron. So what I'm getting at here is you have so many options of things you can do with these legions. It's up to you to expand on the fly, to take that vertical slice of the universe, to take that couple of sentences or paragraphs and expand on it and go, oh, I could do this. Oh, I could do that. All right. And I'll give you maybe one last example today, and that's going to be Death Guard. Let's throw them in the end. Death Guard, what do we know them for? They're the scythe guys, they're the smelly fart guys, they're the guys who closest resemble Magic the Gathering players in real life, but they're less overweight, and they have better hygiene. They're also the guys who have the chemical weapons, bioweapons, and chemical flamers, that sort of thing. Cool. What don't we think of when we think of the Death Guard? Well, we know this from Horus Heresy Black Book 1, Betrayal, from 2012, which talks about it a lot. We also know it from the original trilogy of the Sons of Horus from the very start of the Horus Heresy novel series, because it talks about it a bit in the second and third book. And we also know it from Flight of the Eisenstein, and its tanks. When we think of armoured spearheads, we do not think of the Death Guard. But the Death Guard had a sizable tank force. Just Mortarion didn't like them. He was all about the infantry, the man on the ground, the man in the trench, fighting the combats. He loved attrition warfare. Verdun gave the man a hard-on, which is disturbing on many, many levels. When you mention Passchendaele, he just gives you that John Voight, the eyes, right? That kind of thing. Yeah. But tanks, well, the tanks were where all the Terrans in the Legion was sent. So Garrow was unique among the Legion in that he wasn't from Barbarous. He was a Terran, and he was still in favour with Mortarion, but generally Mortarion favoured those from Barbarous, his adoptive homeworld. Those who came from Terra were sort of second-class citizens within the Legion. They got the worst assignments. The tank companies. The tank companies were where they were sent, along with a lot of the Psychers would be hanging around in those areas as well, because again, they were disliked amongst the Legion. They were out of favour. So you could do something with that. You could do a Death Guard tank-themed force of mostly Terran loyalists that uses different tactics to regular Death Guard. Why not? You could even stray outside of using the Death Guard's Legion traits. You could do Shattered Legions or Black Shields, or pick another Legion entirely to represent the Force. If you pick a wise one, that is, you don't just do it for power gaming for advantage type stuff, but I mean something that fits the feel of what that might look like better. Maybe something involving things like Outflank. Okay? So you could do a tank-themed force. You could still keep hints of the Death Guard in there. Take Aquators with Phosphex, for example. Cool. That's keeping themes of the Death Guard in place. You could take Pintle Flamers as Alchem Flamers, for example, on the tanks. Heavy Alchem Flamer Pintle weapons. there are options available to you if you are willing to look for them with these forces. You know, you don't have to take Sons of Horus every game and take, they do tip of the spear assault, abandon lead the deep strike, Reavers every day. Like, you don't need to do that. You know, the Horus Heresy, and the reason why I'm so attracted to it as a game system, and why despite all the negativity I still linger around, is because there are so many great ideas to explore in this universe. There are 18 distinct legions. Each of those legions is made up of so many different facets, okay? And the only legion that we really explore these facets with is probably just the Dark Angels. Because, yeah, they're sort of known for their first company Terminators, the Deathwing, and they're sort of known for their jet bikes and the Raven Wing. But to a lesser degree, we don't really talk about Iron Wing or Dreadwing, and it doesn't help they haven't got great rights of war, don't get me wrong, or the Fire Wing. But at least you know the wings exist, right? So, what I'm saying is, look at these legions, look at their fluff, and try and create themes that aren't just, I'm playing Death Guard, so, I'm going to get a bunch of Grave Wardens, and I'm going to get a bunch of Death Shroud, and I guess I'll play, Reaping Rite of War, and, a bunch of las cannons. You don't have to go with boring, is what I'm saying. Explore the universe, have some fun with it, and as long as you're competitive, you don't have to win games, but as long as you can, compete in them and not feel like you're just bashing your head against a wall, you'll enjoy it. Because people will come to you and start asking you questions you've never been asked before. Like, dude, what's the idea behind this army? It's so different to what I've seen from this legion before. Tell me about that. You can engage people in conversation, and it can open up interesting new friendships that you didn't think you would have, and opportunities like that. It's just, these are the cool things about the hobby that I love. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. I'm back with the Outer Circle. Please let me know what kind of fluff interests you. I know, I've done Nemesis chapter for Ultramarines before. That's one that I had a lot of fun with. And obviously the Sagimazan with White Scars. But why don't you throw some ideas of cool stuff out there? If an idea is bad, I think we can discuss that like adults and just say, it's kind of a bad idea, right? There's nothing wrong with having those kind of discussions. If we're adults, we should be open to and willing to. We don't just have to support every idea that exists, but if it has a solid foundation, I don't see why we shouldn't support an idea. Anyway, that's it for me. I'm back with the Outer Circle. See you next time.